Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. And just to close the loop on my column on Anthony Kennedy, and you can read it at rightlyconcerned.com. It was posted this morning. I sent out a tweet with a link to it. So if you'd like to get on my Twitter feed, my handle is Brian J. Fisher, and you get a chance to get a sneak preview of a lot of the stories that we're going to cover during the program. And a lot of times I don't have time. We just have 2 hours here. Not enough time to get to every story that I find of interest or of significance. I'm not going to send a tweet out about any story that I don't find interesting. If it's not intriguing to me, if I don't think it's significant, I'm not going to mess with it. So I'm not going to waste your time. The only stuff I'm going to send out is stuff that I believe is interesting or has some significance, and I think you will, in most cases, find that also to be the case. For instance, I didn't send anything out about this whole rat story. Now, I find that interesting that rats can jump 3 feet in the air. I find it interesting that rats can climb brick walls. I find it interesting that rats can run across telephone poles. But I didn't want to waste your time, your precious time looking at your Twitter feed by talking about that. So I'm wasting time right here on the program by talking about it. But anyway, that's the whole point, is I'm just going to send you tweets that I think are of some interest and have some significance. Now, back to the Anthony Kennedy thing. Look, I think maybe this guy's waking up to the damage that his own ruling has done. The Lawrence v. Texas was the ultimate expression of moral relativism. And now he's lamenting that. Moral relativism. Teachers can't define what's good. They can't identify what's good and distinguish it from what's evil. They can't even call people a hero because there's no right from wrong. There's no way to tell. And so maybe 9 years too late, he's winding up now realizing that maybe he has unleashed Pandora's box, and that's not necessarily a good thing. Now, we've got the issue of abortion and Roe v. Wade, speaking of the Supreme Court. And, Jeff, let's grab the Norm Coleman clip if we can to get ready for this. I was contacted by Talking Points Memo. This is a far left-leaning website, political website in Washington, D.C., and one of their reporters, their congressional correspondents, contacted me this morning to ask me for my reaction to comments that were made by former Senator Norm Coleman in Minnesota. And Minnesota, by the way, is in play now. I mean, it's been moved. ABC has moved Minnesota, of all places, from the lock column for the Democrats into the lean Democrat. And they're even sending Bill Clinton out there to campaign in Minnesota. And ABC is saying, look, Minnesota is no longer safe for Barack Obama. ABC has also moved Pennsylvania from the safe column to the leans Obama column. So they still have them leaning toward Obama, but they're no longer safe. And a striking thing in Oregon, I mean, everywhere you look, it's bad news for President Obama. You look at the state of Oregon, for instance, right? This is a state that President Obama took in 2008, 57-41. I mean, it was Custer at the Little Bighorn. He wiped the floor with John McCain in 2008, 57-41. He's only up right now in Oregon 47-41. He can't break the 47% threshold. Now, he's still got a 6-point lead over Romney, but 8% of the folks in Oregon are undecided, and he's still below the 50% threshold. And it's also interesting. So if he's got trouble in Minnesota, he's got trouble in Pennsylvania, he's got question marks even in a place like Oregon, then you know that he's got some serious problems on his hands. It's also interesting, by the way, that in Oregon, there is an initiative to legalize marijuana. That puppy looks like it's going down. Latest polling data, it's underwater 49-42. So the folks in Oregon, I think what they're saying, look, we've had enough. We've had enough of this marijuana business. We've seen what it does. We don't like it. We don't want it. We don't want it legalized in our state. Washington State has also got a marijuana initiative, and that looks like it may pass. But remember, I went over this a couple weeks ago. There's research now that indicates that prolonged marijuana use, especially if you start in your teenage years, will have permanent damage to your IQ, to your intelligence quotient. Permanent damage. It never can be undone, even if you stop. Even if you stop smoking, stop using, those IQ points never do come back. And they're discovering a link now between heavy pot use as a teenager and attention deficit problems and memory problems later in life. So we know that marijuana is bad for you. Don't let anybody out there tell you that it's harmless, that it's innocent, that it doesn't do any damage. It damages brain capacity, memory, attention, IQ. All of that is affected by extensive pot use. And we know, I saw a study the other day about what happens when marijuana is legalized, like in Colorado. When medical marijuana was legalized in Colorado, pot use among teenagers went up 45%. Why? Because the state is sending a signal to all of its citizens that smoking marijuana is A-OK. It is just fine. And the reality is it is not. I mean, you can talk all you want about it being a gateway drug, and I would oppose it just from that standpoint alone. We know from places like Denmark that it is a gateway drug. And it's a gateway not only to harder drugs, but also to crime of all kinds. You know, in the Netherlands right now, they're shutting down these pot coffee houses as fast as they can because they've discovered that these places are centers of criminal activity and they do attract traffic in harder core drugs. So I would be opposed to it just as a gateway drug, but I'm opposed to it because it harms people. It hurts people. It's not innocent. It's not just a recreational thing. It does damage to the brain, and we don't want our people to grow up brain damaged. I don't want people growing up brain damaged in the United States, and therefore I think it ought to be contrary to public policy. So anyway, so Obama's got trouble in Oregon, underwater only at 47%. Now Rasmussen, and this is a significant thing, Gallup has done some looking at this early voting, and again, this is, again, where the meme out there is that the Democrats have been winning the early voting, that Obama's been cleaning up in the early voting. All these absentee ballots, all of them, majority of them going toward Obama. Well, Gallup has done a survey, done a polling, and they have come to the conclusion that in early voting, Romney is leading Obama 52-45. That right now in early voting, Romney is up 7, 52-45. Now, you go back 4 years ago, at the same time, October 28, 2008, 4 years ago, virtually to the day, Obama was hammering John McCain in the early vote 55-40. He was up 15 points in early voting, and about the same number of people, about 33%, had voted early. So it's not like there's been this rush of early voters in 2012 that we didn't see in 2008. About the same number of people voting early in 2012 that did in 2008. And Obama, instead of being up 15 like he was in 08, is now down 7. So it's been a 22-point swing against Barack Obama. So once again, it's looking bad for Barack Obama, looking good for Mitt Romney at 52-45 in the early voting. And Gallup is saying that more Republicans than Democrats have voted by a margin of 19 to 15%. So 19% of Republicans have voted early, 15% of Democrats have voted early. And this goes to the turnout issue because Gallup is indicating, look, party affiliation actually favors Republicans this year, I think virtually for the first time in history. In other words, for the first time, what Gallup has discovered is that more people identify as Republican than as Democrats, likely voters, by about 4 points. So you can expect to see, they're saying, look, if this pans out, then you can expect to see 4% more Republicans turning out than Democrats. So these polls ought to reflect a +4 differential for the Republicans if they're going to be accurate. Remember, a lot of these have had Democrats being oversampled at +7, +9, +11, and even then they can barely get Obama over the hump. So what Gallup has discovered is we were right about this +4 Republican affiliation. There are more Republicans that intend to vote, apparently, than Democrats. More people identify as Republican than identify as Democrats, and they are going to go to the polls. So that is a hopeful sign for Mitt Romney. And then Rasmussen's got an electoral thing that they do. They keep track of a projected electoral count. Remember, you need 269 to win. And the latest state-by-state polling from Rasmussen has Mitt Romney leading President Obama 279 to 243 in projected electoral votes. Now, on the 9 key swing states, Rasmussen's got Romney up in Florida by 2 points, up in Ohio by 2 points, up in Virginia by 2, up in Colorado by 4, up in New Hampshire by 2. It has Obama leading in just 2 states, Pennsylvania and Nevada. But remember, ABC's looking at Pennsylvania and saying, yeah, that's leaning Obama, but it's not safe for anymore. So Pennsylvania perhaps is in play, and Minnesota is in play. So again, it takes 269 to win, and Rasmussen right now projecting Romney at 279, and it's pretty late in the game for that to change much. Remember that poll, University of Colorado, they said, look, a 77% chance that Governor Romney is going to win the popular vote, and they have him projected at 330 electoral votes. Now, you heard Mike Huckabee on the break talking about our voter guide. Go to afaaction.net. This is the premier voter guide in the land. It's a kill shot voter guide, the only voter guide you need. If you're a values voter, this is the only one you need. Go to afaaction.net. Tell your friends about it, afaaction.net. Tell your small group about it, afaaction.net. Tell your church about it, afaaction.net. Tell your pastor about it, afaaction.net. Tell your Sunday school class about it, afaaction.net. Tell your Sunday night service about it, afaaction.net. It is the kill shot voter guide for this election for values voters. We profile candidates in every conceivable way that a candidate can be evaluated in terms of his allegiance to conservative values. And we give these candidates a letter grade based on the research that our team has done to project how these candidates are likely to vote or govern if they are elected to office. So it becomes enormously helpful to voters that are looking for guidance in how to vote on November 6th. afaaction.net. If you've got an iPhone, just text the word Apple to 70994. Text the word Apple to 70994, and it'll pop right up. Same thing for an iPad. Just text the word Apple to 70994. If you got an Android, text the word Android to 70994, and the app will pop right up. Now, when we come back, I'll talk to you about this Norm Coleman thing. I got started on that. That got me thinking about Minnesota. That got me way off in the weeds. We'll come back, play the Norm Coleman clip, and we'll take your calls. The number to call if you want to weigh in on what we've talked about, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Back in 2.